Yeah, no, I can't do that. Nope. Can't ever do that.
Do not fail us.
Nope.
Do not fail us.
I shall. Can't ever do that. It goes against everything within my being. Everything.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us today. As you can see, I have a special co-host with me. This is my wife, Katie. She's on here today because if you've been following us, you know that we just recently had a trip to Utah. Went to Salt Lake City, saw some cool stuff.
Had a fantastic time. Absolutely loved it.
And then we were there because I was going to go through Crucible, which is another video on this channel that you're going to see shortly. But then when I was there, I heard about another show that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this one has intrigued me. Like, I keep seeing all these Instagram posts and whatnot. It's called Lucid. And I knew that, hey, I'm already doing this big show. I can't go and do something else on my own. So I talked her into doing this. And she's never done these experiences.
No, I do not do any of this. So this is his thing. And I'm full support, but as far as like the extreme haunts and the immersive experiences go, this was definitely something he had to talk me into.
And so, real quick, you're not upset though that you went to it, right?
No, not at all. I honestly, I think it may have even been such a great experience that I'm now probably more open to more experiences.
Okay, so this is good for me. Also tonight, I have a special guest here with us. This is a representative from Lucid. I don't know if you want me to say your name or not, or we could just call you the auditor.
I feel the name is of no significant importance. All that is important is what I stand for and who I stand with.
Okay, all right. So, this is one of the characters that we came in contact with during our show, and let me just say, amazing show, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
This is the show for somebody wanting to test the waters for an immersive experience. I mean, I've been to them before, and I had a blast. I loved it. So even if you're a veteran at immersive experiences, this is one to go and do. But if you're like my wife, who has never been to one, it was a very positive experience. So,
absolutely.
Let me ask you, what was that your idea going in when you started creating Lucid?
So our original genesis of where we wanted to go with the project was very different. The original layout was much more attuned to a traditional, not an extreme haunt, but a more extreme immersive experience. We had plans to make it different than what maybe had been done before or improve upon ideas we had heard about. But as we got more into the developmental process, we hit a lot of blocking points, a lot of issues, a lot of things that we had to work around. And I think in any project, you always find those issues that you have to work around. And then the disease that is afflicting us all currently has hit. And we reached the point of, well, now we can't touch anybody. And that kind of sparked the idea of, what if we could do it without touching anyone? That would solve a lot of the issues we had from a legal insurance standpoint, to make sure that, we can cover ourselves, we can cover our guests, we can do everything properly, because we are about adhering to the rules. So that kind of sparked the idea for, okay, what if instead of this project being the original idea for pushing the limits of extreme immersive in a different way, we pull it back. We say, we're not about pushing forward. We're not about pushing beyond your limits. We're about seeing how far back we can pull this and still give you a very emotional, horrifying, and intense experience. I think that would be the best word to describe it.
I would agree.
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to ask you that question. Emotional. Like,
I don't even know if that's the word to describe what I went through. But yeah, definitely emotional. It in more ways than one. And it's so hard. Like coming back and having people, were asking me like, so what was this immersive experience? And I don't know that I could explain it. But yeah, I mean, for me, there was definitely an emotional reaction as well as a physical reaction for me.
So let me ask you, how would you sell Lucid to a person new to the immersive or extreme immersive horror community?
We have been in contact with people who have never experienced something like this. I believe so far, three of our guests, it has been their first time ever doing an immersive or interactive theatrical performance. And I feel part of the marketing and the pushing of the show is designed to emphasize that idea that this is for people who are new to it, but we have tricks up our sleeve that we are willing to add or adjust for our veterans. On the note of Katie having a difficult time explaining it, I feel like that goes to the individuality we try to bring to each show. Both of your shows were different, and I know you both discussed your shows and noticed there were differences that maybe you are still questioning if it was part of the show or not between your shows. Back to your question, not to linger too far, of how we would market or recommend it in that sense, I would say that it is first and foremost a piece of theater, a piece of interactive and immersive theater. It is not necessarily designed to scare you or to traumatize you. That can be a side effect of the performance and of the nature of the content we're talking about. But the way I describe it to people and my associates is we say, this is a show. This is a piece of theater, but you are the main character. We know a lot of other places like to say, oh, it's your own personal nightmare. It's your own personal horror movie. We want to push that in a similar vein, but in a different way, where this isn't your own personal horror movie per se, but you very much are the main character, and everything we talk about is going to be about you. Mm-hmm. I know you both, having experienced your audits, know what I mean by that.
Yes.
Without giving too much away. And that's what we try and push forward to people, is that every show is going to be different. If there are constraints or things that you feel would be unsafe for a show, we will work with you to remove those or to add those if you would like them in your show. We are very open to collaborating with our guests. One of the other important cornerstones of the idea is a collaboration between guest and creator to make what is the perfect show for them, or at the very least, something they may enjoy beyond a typical pay for a movie ticket, sit down and watch something that's been pre-made for a mass audience. I know we do have an upcoming show in the works for November that we are working with an individual to create something for them. That hasn't been announced on the Instagram or anywhere. It's something we're still keeping under our sleeve, but you're hearing about that now, and you'll see more about that to come. And kind of pushing the ideas for the show of blurring the line between actor and audience. That has always been something that has personally fascinated me, is the relationship between an audience and the performance or the actors. And we very much try and push that in our marketing, where it's difficult to tell who may be an actor and who may be an audience member in the photos. And we want you to feel that way in the performance, that you may feel more an actor in the show than some of our actors. They may feel more like an audience member to you in what is going on. I feel like if you both want to comment on that, and if you felt that way or felt that idea.
Yeah, well, now I think that was like, there was a couple of interesting points in there. First off, our experiences were, while there were some similarities just because of our own, connections to one another, there was so many differences. And there was, even after, there was things that I noticed that he didn't, and things that I questioned, and I'm like, well, was that real, or was that part of it? So, I know that was something that we talked about in depth for even, a week after. We were still kind of processing a lot of it. And that was one thing that came up quite a bit, was what was actually part of the show and what wasn't. But then just how different our experiences were. I think that was what really shocked me.
what I loved about it was so incredibly personal. In some aspects, like there was tons of stuff that made my show for me, her show for her.
Mm-hmm.
But you're able to have a storyline that makes sense and change it for every different person going through. Like, just mind-blowing how good you did with that. I felt like I was in a thriller. Like I felt like it was like like you say, not a horror movie, but it was like a thriller. Like I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Like my heart was going. I'm not going to say that I didn't go through it thinking, oh, this is easy. No, my heart was going through it. But you guys are so talented that the fact that you don't even touch anyone, you know?
And you jumped. I remember you jumping pretty hard, at least once.
Yes, yeah. I had a good jump in there. I just feel that you guys were able to hit all different types of emotions, and things that would make me have a certain reaction were different than things that she would have a certain reaction for. And you guys were able to pick up on that throughout the show and run with it. And I thought that was just amazing one.
You know, like I know that there was definitely, you know, there was moments where I was incredibly like uncomfortable. And I don't want to say like fear, because I don't know that that's necessarily the right word, but I'm anxious and just that build up. And so I definitely had a lot of those moments, and I know that there was some points where I probably jumped and got a little oversensitive just because I think it was that hyper awareness.
We definitely strive with the performance, and I think with any good story to have a build. And there are different climactic points, rising and falling action. But as you both know, having gone through it, the intensity and the level of immersion grows as the story builds. And we have some methods that we use early in the beginning to help make later devices feel more realistic, maybe introduce doubt a bit more than it would be if we just came out of the gate swinging.
Yeah.
And I think a thriller is a perfect explanation of what the Audit is, because it is a very slow burn. It starts odd, it slowly builds, and it creeps into you. In that sense, it's only as good as you want the story to be. If you're not interested, or if you're not willing to suspend your disbelief and believe maybe you are in a different world for a second, then the thriller may not work for you. It'll still be an incredibly, I believe, entertaining experience, and we will pull tricks out that will make you go, wow, that was crazy. But it's really the suspension of disbelief on the audience's side, on your side, that makes the show what it is. You may not realize how much work you're doing as an audience member to make it work in your own mind. We're merely the players on the stage. You're the director of the show. It may not feel that way. And we've done a lot of practice with the Crucible. They've been a wonderful training ground for myself and several of our other associates to work on the methods for this show to ensure they're sound and they work and they are effective with people. So this isn't our first go at this. We've been practicing and working at this for about a year at this point to get to where this idea really works, the show works. And to talk a bit more on, I believe you mentioned the level of vulnerability and truthfulness that it had for yourselves. That was another really important cornerstone. I used that word before, but it feels necessary for the show. Is in theater, a lot of times it's hard to tell what's real, what's fake. We suspend our disbelief because we want to believe it's real. Part of the idea with Lucid and with this show is we want to tell stories that are real and that make you go, wait, this is not, I think this is real. And there was a moment where I know each of you were told a story, and I feel comfortable letting you know that was a real story. There are moments that we introduce into the story to help feed into our fictionalized storyline, which Chris mentioned how it plays into the greater story overall. But that's always been an important piece of the show, is that as you, as our audience member and our guest, are being hopefully vulnerable with yourself and expressing yourself with us, we're going to return the favor. And we're going to make you the promise that we're going to be honest about ourselves. If we tell you something, it's going to be from a truthful place. And we find that there is a sort of uncanny aspect to a true story that you just can't write.
Yeah.
And when you get that true story of trauma, there are those details that that individual remembers that no matter how good of a writer you are, you'll never quite capture the real thing unless you've experienced the event. And that's a level of trust with the actors, myself, and the audience member to say, what are you comfortable telling? How vulnerable are you okay being? So you experienced a lot of emotion in the show, both on your parts, and one of our actors was very emotional with you. I do believe, from what he has expressed with me with his performance, that the emotion you are experiencing from him was true emotion. It was not a facade. It was not a play. That was real. And that's part of blurring the lines of what is the show, what is reality. We are telling you real stories. We are being truthful with you. But on the other hand, we're also telling you a lot of lies, and we're doing a lot of deception. And that makes it really what's real, what isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Audit is the first show Lucid has done, correct? Like,
Yes, this we consider the Audit to be our prologue. Another idea that fed into the Audit is our original idea for the production had about 75 to 100 questionnaire that you would fill out.
oh, wow.
It was, the questionnaire itself was almost designed to be a show that would psychologically torment you as you got further into it. It would take about an hour to complete the questionnaire. And that would let us know everything we need to know to design your show. And then the thought came up while we were creating the Audit of, why don't we just make the questionnaire into the show? Why don't we just make that our first show? And that's really what the Audit is the Audit is us getting to know you, us learning about you, so that if you decided to engage in a future offering, we know what we need to know to individualize a show to you, to add details that may make you question the reality and the truthfulness of the show. Was that added just for me, or is that just part of the generic storyline? How much is this a show for me, or is this just a mass appeal? And to play off of the idea of mass entertainment in that sense. So that is kind of one of the main ideas for the Audit as well, was to be a standing questionnaire, but then that isn't just enough to be a show on its own. And as you both know, there is kind of an act 2 to the show. I would say the interview is act 1, and then there's an act 2 where we kind of step away from yourself, and that's when you get to know a bit more about us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I want to ask, can we talk about the second show that I attended through Lucid?
I would be happy to talk about that show. That is your Collimation 1-A.
All right. So what you didn't get to participate in was at the beginning of Crucible, which I got to say, I thought that was taking time off the clock at Crucible. So I was all psyched. I'm like, yes, I'm getting through Crucible even easier. Then I find out the clock never even started at Crucible.
We were very, we had our eyes on our clock the entire time, and we were very careful with time to ensure you would get back just before the festivities began at the Crucible.
Right. So what I absolutely love that they were able to do with the second show is show you that it's not the smoke and mirror. Like, they proved things to you, you know?
Yeah.
This is what you're going through. So this was a contact show, which going through Crucible, it was already signed that we were doing the contact stuff. So we knew what we were getting to head into. And I feel like this was a step up from the Audit. You know, I think somebody that could be their first go around, maybe having the Audit prior to it, it would be a good stepping stone. But I felt like I never crossed any crazy barrier. So I don't want to give it away, but there's a whole nother story that continued from the night before for me, with a lot of shock value. Like, it was a lot more intense. When I say thriller, this is the part that sticks into my head, was like, this was act 3 to the 2 acts that we did before, where everything was coming full circle. And it was just a crazy mix of events that you went through. You got the different emotions, you got the scares. Yeah, I mean, so what made you want to do another show while the Audit was also going?
One thing we like to do is we like to make our guests feel like they're the most important thing in the world to us. They are, but we want to make sure they know that, and they know that we love them. So whenever we have an opportunity to do something for someone, we would happily do that. That show, as you know, it was no additional charge. There was no charge. There was no ticket. It was sprung upon you. You may have had an idea it was going to occur. You may not have had an idea it was going to occur. Before I get a bit into that show, I want to mention, because you said Act 3, part of our plan, without giving too much away, because I don't know if the individual will watch this or not, for our November show that we are working with the individual to create, is they want to attend the audit. So we're going to do the audit. And our plan is immediately after the audit, they will begin something similar to what you experienced, but it will be different and unique for them. So in a way, it will be a direct Act 3. And we are curious to hear their feedback and how that affects them. But talking a bit more about that idea, with the contact in the show, I know you know, and we'll reveal that for the most part, it was very minimal. There shouldn't have been anything that was abrasive or striking for the most part. It was more so used to get you where we needed you to be, put you in situations. And that's part of the idea of pulling back, showing you how intense we can really get without ever having to actually threaten you with our own hands, for the most part. And the idea of that show is that's part of our testing ground with Crucible. Is there were things that you experienced that night, but that was our first time trying them. We had tested them before, so we knew they were safe and we knew how to do them, but we had never done them with a perspective or a subject. So in a way, you as well as Melissa, and I believe the other 3 that went through were Eli, Katie, and Lindsay. Those were the 5 that experienced it. We're the first ones to experience some of those sequences. We had never done those before, and we wanted to see how effective they were, if they were something that we want to put into future shows, if there's something that we want to develop or change. So you got a taste of kind of what we've been doing for the past year in Crucible, where we are testing out methods to see if they work with people in that space. And we know at the end of the day, they're still going to have a fantastic Crucible show. So if something doesn't quite work with that sequence, you still have about 7 more hours of craziness that's hopefully going to make you not remember the part that didn't work as well as the rest of the Crucible. But going back to the collimation, there were ideas in that show that we've wanted to do since the beginning. And that show had a lot of parts that were in the original show. So that show was a lot closer to the original idea. And we're now working on how can we do that show and make it no contact? Is there a way to make the experience you went through no contact? And I think there is. Part of the difficulty, as you mentioned, is there's a lot of proving to you things are real. It's difficult to hide things from you and still have you be able to walk around. For example, if you were blindfolded and we needed you to go somewhere and not see something, how do we accomplish that without touching you? And I feel that for the most part, that's what most of the touch was used, was to really guide you through the experience. And the note of proving things to you, that's always been the standpoint of, as I mentioned a moment ago in our previous question, what is real, what is fake? Mm-hmm. I know that you were never in harm's way. I know that the entire time you were safe. I would never do anything to compromise your safety. That's the most important thing to us. But we have ways of showing you in a different way than you may expect as a veteran guest that this is really real and this is really happening. Trick your mind in a way that it may not be expected to be tricked by taking expectation and establishing a pattern, and we break that pattern, but you don't know that we've broken that pattern.
I think after hearing about his experience with the next one, and with me having such a positive experience, you know, with that first little dipping my toe in the water with the immersive, I think that I would be ready to try that next level.
Oh, yeah, you'd love it.
And so it's definitely, you know, the next time that we can get back out that way, mm-hmm. I definitely want to try to go to the next.
Mm-hmm. And I can let you know, we do have 2 more ideas that are slated, neither of which you experience. So what you experience is completely different from what we have planned currently for the future. That's more kind of the side show, the side story, that if people want a little bit more, we're happy to offer that and to make that more intense experience for them. But the next current show we haven't started working, developing or anything. The script is there, but we're waiting until Halloween season passes, as each of our associates are involved with other organizations that are occurring at this time. So we want to be respectful of those commitments and make sure that when we do our performances, they can be fully committed to us. But part of our next idea is going to push a little bit more on ideas of the audit, ideas of you being involved as a main character, you going through a storyline. But now, after the audit, you've been kind of inducted, or at least begun your journey with this company, with this organization. So now they're trying to show you things from a different side, trying to say, well, we like what you had to offer. We like who you are. We want to show you a bit more of who we are, what we do, what we experience. And we don't know if that show will work. We will obviously test it on people who we had test the audit with to see if it works, but it will be a more progressive step up from the audit. Your show, I would say, is more 2 or 3 steps up, but in a physical sense, maybe not in an emotional sense. I think this show is a much bigger emotional step than your custom Crucible show was.
Okay. So, all right. So how, if I'm a person looking to go through your experience, how do I find you?
Right now, we pretty much only exist on Instagram. It is at lucid_and_umbral_awakening. So just lucid and umbral awakening with underscores between every word. You can also email us at that email, lucidandumbralawakening@gmail.com. We're happy to answer any questions for you. Through the Instagram, you should be able to review our photos and our highlights for show details and postings. You reserve your appointment through the email with us. Part of the reason why we don't really have a website, we have a small Facebook page, but that more so redirects you to the Instagram, is at this time we're not really prepared to release this on a more mass scale. The nature of the audit is it takes us maybe a week to develop and create each show because of the individuality for the person. And we could let however many people in a week and go that route, but it would compromise part of the result of the performance. And we're not here to make money off this. We're not here to become famous off this. We're here to be creators, be performers, do what's in our blood, which is give someone an experience they'll never forget. There's something very rewarding about that. And that's why the charge for the show, if you guys felt, is low, I think, for what it is.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and part of the reason is it pretty much covers the cost and the time of the space. And we're not making much off of that because we just want to give you something you'll never forget. There's something very rewarding in that for us. It's not in the way where you may see shows like Crucible or harder shows where it's like, well, there must be some sadistic pleasure that the actor gets out of this harshness. And you know from our show that there really isn't any side of it where I would say we're being sadistic. We're very gentle and caring with you for the most part, but there's a horror in someone you don't know doing that with you. And talking about contacting the show, I know that one of the individuals for the Crucible actually reached out to us as well and said, I want to do an audit that weekend as well. And we had to turn them away because we had both of yours already scheduled and we didn't feel that we would be able to give them the show they deserve with that time. That person did get to be involved in the collimation show. So they did get to know who we are, see of what we're about, but it was part of our integrity as performers where we could take their money, we can do this show, but it won't be right by them. It won't be right by us. It may not be the show they deserve to have. I would much rather have them wait. And we say it on the Instagram, we may say it on the email, but your patience is part of the test and it's part of the show. It's part of the ride. It's part of the anxiety. If we just let everyone in through our doors all the time, I don't think it would be the show that you feel it is.
Yeah.
Part of the allure and part of the story, you both know how it plays into the story, is that it's very secretive, very low key. We want you to discover us. We want you to become intrigued. You have to initiate. You have to reach out to us. You have to be the reason everything happens. You don't see an ad and go, oh, maybe that's for me. You discover this small little box in the corner of the room and you go, I kind of want to know what's in that box. And that's us.
I think that's a perfect explanation of it. And I I think and I like that you would not compromise the integrity of that, because that was such an important aspect, I think, of both of our experiences, was that personalization that went into it. That, I think, for me, was probably the thing that impressed me the most, was just that personalization of that show for me. So absolutely.
Yeah. And that is different for everyone, because, you know, our archives are only so deep for each individual. We can only dig up so much of what we have saved. We may not have been tracing someone as far as someone else. So in that sense, every show is different. But for individuals, and we have had individuals who we did not have as much stored information on, we have different things that we implement into their show to ensure that at the end of the show, we still feel they got what they deserve for their performance.
Yeah. So any last things that you want to say before we go?
I want to thank you both for being vulnerable and taking scary and daunting steps into an unknown world of your own mind in a way that only you would allow yourself to do. Part of the unspoken agreement between you and myself, the creators and the performers, is there's a lot of things that are said that we won't mention. So I'm not going to mention reactions or things you said, because I feel those are very personal, very private to you, and we respect that. And that's part of the, as I mentioned, the unspoken agreement between yourself and myself. But I did just want to thank you both for opening yourself up to that experience, and hope that anyone else who decides they would like to attend has the understanding that it really is only as good as you allow it to be. If you want the show to be amazing, it will be amazing. If you're going in there going, it's probably going to be whatever, it's not going to be super intense, yada, yada, it may be, or it may not be. That's the challenge for you as an audience member, is we're placing that expectation on you that we're really going to play off of you. We're really going to listen to you, and we're going to work with you to make something that is just for you and is very unique. And that's where the horror for me comes from. The horror comes from, okay, this is no longer a show. This is me.
Right.
Yes.
We're talking about, I don't know what's going on anymore. This doesn't feel scripted. And the show isn't scripted. Pretty much it's all off the cuff. If anyone has any questions or any concerns, they can always email us. We are more than happy to speak out of character to make sure that no one feels they are ever hurt emotionally or physically during a show. We want you to walk out of it having the best experience of your life. We don't want anyone to walk out going, that was too much. I didn't like that. I was pushed too far. So that's the conversation between us.
I found it very cathartic, and in a weird way. I mean, it was a while after, but I really like that vulnerability. I think anyone that does, especially if it's first time, I highly recommend it, but go in with an open mind and allow yourself to be vulnerable and experience it, because it was amazing.
Yeah. And I just want to thank you for creating something so good, so positive, that is in this community. I love that this is something, everybody's always trying to do something that is just really tough to get through, really, this is something that anybody can step into and have just a blast, have a great time. The quality is amazing. The acting is amazing, top notch, everything you do. So thank you so much for making something like that for everybody to attend. And I guess this is just going to wrap up the show for us, everyone. If you are in the Salt Lake City area, find these guys. They are amazing. You will not be upset. So go find Lucid, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.